Welcome to Nicki Woo Cozy Stories. I'm your host, Nicki. Tonight's story is The Legend of Sleepy Hollow, Episode 1, The Valley Wrapped in Dreams. Before we begin, if these stories bring you comfort, I'd love for you to subscribe so you can always find your way back whenever you need a quiet place to rest. And now, let's wander into Sleepy Hollow. There are places in this world that seem to exist just beyond the reach of ordinary time. Places where life unfolds a little more slowly, where old traditions are lovingly kept, and where the stories of generations are never quite forgotten. Sleepy Hollow is one such place. Nestled among the gentle hills that rise along the eastern shore of New York's Hudson River lies a quiet little valley unlike any other. Travelers have admired its peaceful beauty for centuries. Yet, those who have lingered there the longest will often tell you that its greatest charm cannot be seen at all. In fact, it is something to be felt. There is, they say, a curious drowsiness about the place, a dreamy stillness that seems to settle over the valley like the soft morning mist. Whether it drifts upon the air itself or lives only in the imagination of those who dwell there, no one has ever been able to say with certainty. Yet, almost everyone who passes through Sleepy Hollow leaves believing that the little valley possesses a spirit all its own. Perhaps it's the gentle murmur of the brook that wanders lazily through the glen. Perhaps it's the rustling leaves that whisper together whenever the autumn breeze stirs the ancient trees. Or perhaps it's simply the quiet contentment of a place where time has never seemed in much of a hurry. The people of Sleepy Hollow have long been known for their peaceful ways. Their days pass pleasantly among fertile fields and whitewashed farmhouses, while their evenings are often spent gathered beside glowing hearths where neighbors exchange laughter, memories, and the old tales that have been handed down through one generation after another. And there are many such tales. Some speak of lonely woodland paths where unseen footsteps have been heard. Others tell of strange lights dancing across the quiet meadows after sunset. There are stories of haunted brooks, forgotten bridges, and shadowed groves where travelers have claimed to glimpse things they could never afterward explain. But above all of them, there is one legend that has endured longer than any other. It is a tale of a mysterious horseman who is said to ride through the hollow on autumn nights in search of something forever lost. Whether the story is true, well, as with most old legends, each listener must decide that for himself. But every legend has its beginning, and ours begins not with the horseman, but with a schoolmaster, a lanky, good-hearted fellow whose greatest concerns, at least for the present, were far less mysterious than ghosts or goblins. His name was Ichabod Crane, and he had come to Sleepy Hollow from Connecticut some years before, carrying little more than a modest education, a hopeful nature, and the promise of work as the village schoolmaster. On an autumn afternoon, he might have been seen making his way from one of Hollow's winding lanes, his long figure rising above the stone walls and fading grasses. From a distance, he looked almost as though a scarecrow had stepped down from its post and gone wandering in search of a more interesting life. Yet, there was nothing gloomy about him. Ichabod moved through the valley with an eager curiosity, taking an interest in nearly everything he saw. And in one place so rich with old tales, there was always something new to capture his imagination. To say that Ichabod Crane was a striking figure would be perfectly true, though perhaps not in the way he might have wished. He was tall and exceedingly thin, with narrow shoulders, long arms, and hands that seemed to reach nearly to his knees. His feet were broad and flat, and when he walked, they appeared to carry the rest of him forward almost as an afterthought. His head was small and flattened at the top. 2 large ears stood boldly away from it, while a long nose seemed determined to lead him wherever he went. Beneath a high forehead shone a pair of greenish eyes, always alert and searching. Altogether, he looked rather like a weathercock, perched upon the roof of some country barn, light enough to be turned by the slightest breeze. Yet there was an earnestness about him that made his peculiar appearance easy to forgive. Ichabod took his position seriously. The little schoolhouse entrusted to his care stood alone near the edge of a wood, built of rough logs and filled with the warm, dusty scent of timber, chalk, and well-worn books. Its windows were partly glazed, though here and there a missing pane had been carefully replaced with an old copybook or a folded sheet of paper. A narrow chimney leaned against one end of the building, and nearby a brook wandered through the trees, giving the children a pleasant place to linger whenever lessons were done, or whenever their schoolmaster's attention happened to be elsewhere. Each morning, pupils arrived from farms scattered across the countryside. Some carried books beneath their arms, others brought their dinners wrapped in cloth. They entered noisily enough, though the sight of Ichabod waiting at the front of the room usually encouraged them to settle before too long. For although he was not a cruel man, he believed firmly in discipline. His slender frame concealed surprising strength, and the small bundle of switches kept within reach was not merely decorative. Still, Ichabod preferred to think of himself as fair. He did not punish the weak or timid when a stern look would do, and he was often willing to overlook the mistakes of a smaller child. The stronger boys, however, were expected to endure correction with courage. As Ichabod saw it, this was not severity. It was preparation for life. Once order had been restored, the schoolhouse settled into its daily rhythm. Young voices recited lessons together, pages turned, quill pens scratched slowly across the paper, and from time to time Ichabod paced between the benches, bending his long figure over a pupil's work or tapping a book with one careful finger. He took pride in the progress of his students, especially when their parents were nearby to hear of it. The simple truth was that a country schoolmaster could not afford to rely upon his wages alone. Money was scarce, and Ichabod's appetite was not. Fortunately, the families of Sleepy Hollow followed an old custom of providing their teacher with room and board. Rather than remaining beneath one roof, Ichabod moved from household to household, spending a week here, several days there, according to the number of children each family sent to the school. This arrangement suited him very well. He owned little enough to make moving simple. His belongings could be tied together in a cotton handkerchief and carried beneath his arm. Wherever he went, a place was found for him near the fire, and a chair was drawn up to the family table. Ichabod was always happy to accept both. He made himself useful when he could. He helped with lighter chores around the farm, carried water, cut wood, and sometimes watched the younger children while their mothers attended to household work. He also possessed a certain gentle way with babies. Many a weary mother found him far more charming after discovering that the long, solemn schoolmaster could hold a restless infant upon one knee while rocking the cradle with his foot. The other children gathered around him, too. Ichabod knew songs and simple stories. He could teach them to sing a psalm, correct their reading, or entertain them with bits of village news collected throughout his travels from one home to the other. And He did collect a great deal of news. Few things escaped his notice. A new calf, a promising harvest, a courtship quietly beginning between neighboring farms. Ichabod received each piece of information with eager interest. By the time he passed through several households, he often knew more of the valley's affairs than those who had lived there all their lives. In this way, he became a familiar figure throughout Sleepy Hollow. The farmers knew him as the schoolmaster, their wives welcomed him as a helpful guest, and the children regarded him with a mixture of affection and caution. And Ichabod himself moved contently among them, pleased with his position and always ready for the next warm meal, the next comfortable hearth, or the next story whispered after dark. For stories, especially those concerning ghosts, omens, and mysterious happenings, held a powerful charm to him. But that particular weakness of Ichabod Crane deserves a little more attention. And so, before we follow him any farther through the hollow, we must first learn what happened when the schoolmaster's lively imagination was left alone with the shadows. Of all of Ichabod Crane's peculiarities, none shaped his life quite so much as his fondness for the marvelous. He was not merely entertained by tales of ghosts and enchantments. He believed them. Perhaps not always in the sensible light of morning, when the schoolhouse was busy and the valley appeared perfectly ordinary. But evening had a way of changing things. Once the sun slipped behind the hills and shadows gathered beneath the trees, even the wildest story seemed worthy of a serious consideration. Ichabod's favorite book was a heavy old volume concerning the history of witchcraft in New England. He had read it so often that he knew many passages nearly by heart, though familiarity never made them less alarming. Whenever he found himself staying with a family whose chores ended early, he would carry the book to some quiet corner and settle down to read. In summer, he preferred the shade beside the brook. There, he would stretch himself upon the grass while the water moved softly over the stones, and insects drifted through the warm air. Page after page, he read of strange visitations, mysterious warnings, and unfortunate souls who had encountered forces beyond their understanding. The peaceful valley slowly disappeared around him. The rustling of a squirrel became a footstep. A branch moving in the wind suggested an unseen hand. Even the sudden call of a bird could make Ichabod lift his head and search the trees with uneasy attention. Still, he always returned to the book. Fear, for Ichabod, was not entirely unpleasant, so long as it remained safely contained within the pages before him. The trouble began when daylight faded. He often read until the words blurred in the gathering dusk, and the brook beside him turned dark beneath the trees. Only then would he remember that supper awaited him at some distant farmhouse, and that the path leading there might pass through woods made considerably less welcoming by everything he had just read. Closing the book did little to close his imagination. He would rise, brush the grass from his clothes, and begin the walk home. At first, he moved briskly. The last light of evening still rested on the road, and the familiar fences and fields offered some comfort. But as darkness deepened, Ichabod became aware of every sound around him. A beetle striking against a leaf seemed strangely loud. The wind sighed through the branches, and somewhere beyond the road, an owl called from the woods. Ichabod knew perfectly well that that was an owl. But he also knew that spirits were often said to imitate harmless things. To strengthen his courage, he sang. Ichabod served as singing master for several families in the neighborhood, and he possessed a voice powerful enough to travel a remarkable distance through the still evening air. He would choose a familiar psalm tune, send it ringing along the road, partly as an act of devotion, and partly to warn anything supernatural that he was not an easy man to surprise. The effect upon nearby households was usually reassuring. A farmer fastening his barn door might pause and say that the schoolmaster was on his way home. A child lying awake beneath a quilt might recognize his voice drifting across the fields. Ichabod himself found the sound comforting, at least until an echo returned from the hills and appeared to answer him. Then he sang a little louder. His position as singing master brought him into many homes beyond those of his pupils. On Sunday afternoons, after the day's duties were complete, young people gathered to practice beneath his direction, and Ichabod stood before them with great seriousness, raising one long hand to mark the time while his voice rose confidently above all the others. He was proud of his musical abilities. Indeed, he privately believed that few voices in the countryside could equal his own. The young women listened politely, and Ichabod mistook their attention for admiration, often enough to remain thoroughly pleased with himself. These gatherings also provided him with something he valued nearly as much as music: conversation. When the singing ended and the chairs were drawn closer to the fire, the older residents of the hollow began recalling the stories of their youth. They spoke of omens seen before storms, of mournful sounds heard near lonely bridges, and of travelers who had returned home pale and shaken after taking the wrong road at night. No one told such tales better than the old Dutch wives of the valley. They remembered every haunted tree and troubled stream. They knew where strange lights had appeared and which farm lanes were best avoided after midnight. A story might have changed somewhat in the telling, but this troubled no one, least of all Ichabod. He sat among them with wide, attentive eyes, storing every detail. Sometimes he contributed a tale from his beloved book, pleased to offer the wonders of New England in exchange for the legends of Sleepy Hollow. In this way, the evening passed pleasantly enough, with firelight warming the room and neighbors safely gathered together. Only afterward did Ichabod discover the true cost of such entertainment. The family circle eventually broke apart, candles were extinguished, and the schoolmaster stepped outside alone. The same lane that had seemed peaceful by daylight now stretched ahead beneath a sky crowded with stars. Trees leaned over the road in unfamiliar shapes. The windows behind him glowed warmly for a little while, then vanished as the path turned. Every story he had heard followed him into the darkness. Yet, by morning, the danger always had passed. Sunlight returned the trees to their proper forms. The mournful spirit beside the road became a crooked stump, and the pale figure beyond the field proved to be nothing more alarming than a sheet left out to dry. Ichabod could laugh at his fears then, but he never stopped believing. And because Sleepy Hollow was a place where old stories seemed to gather as naturally as autumn leaves, there was always another tale waiting for him by the next evening fire. Soon, however, something far more powerful than ghosts began to occupy the schoolmaster's imagination. Her name was Katrina Van Tassel. Katrina Van Tassel was the only daughter of a prosperous farmer, and at 18 years of age, she had already become one of the brightest ornaments of Sleepy Hollow. She was blooming, cheerful, and well aware that she was admired. This awareness did not make her vain exactly, but neither did it trouble her. Katrina enjoyed pretty things, pleasant company, and the small power of knowing that a smile from her could improve a young man's entire afternoon. She dressed with care, though never so finely that anyone could accuse her of trying too hard. A ribbon might have been tied just so. A bit of gold might catch the light at her throat. And on Sundays, she appeared in colors that seemed especially chosen to be noticed among the quieter shades of the meeting house. And they were noticed. Ichabod Crane first knew Katrina as one of his singing pupils. She attended his lessons with several other young people from the neighborhood, though from the beginning, Ichabod found his attention wandering toward her end of the room. When Katrina sang, he listened closely. When she smiled, he was inclined to believe the lesson was going particularly well. And when she asked him to repeat some small instruction, he repeated it with a patience not always extended to others. Ichabod was not entirely without experience in such matters. As the village schoolmaster and singing instructor, he was welcomed into many homes, and his position gave him certain opportunities to converse with young women under the respectable protection of lessons, family gatherings, and Sunday afternoons. He knew how to bow. He knew how to offer a compliment, and he believed himself capable of speaking with enough learning and refinement to distinguish himself from the rougher young men of the countryside. Still, Katrina was different. At first, it may have been her bright eyes that drew his notice, then perhaps her playful manner. But whatever tender feeling had begun to take root in Ichabod's heart grew considerably stronger when he first visited her father's farm. Baltus van Tassel lived in one of the most comfortable homesteads in the region. He was a broad, good-natured man who cared little for display. So long as his barns were full, his land was productive, and his table was generously supplied. In all these matters, fortune had treated him kindly. The farmhouse stood near the banks of the Hudson, sheltered by great trees and surrounded by fields that rolled across the countryside in every direction. Smoke rose peacefully from the chimney. A wide porch stretched along the front, and the door seemed always ready to open for a neighbor. To most visitors, it was a picture of contentment. To Ichabod, it was something very near paradise. His eye traveled over the land with growing admiration. There were fields of wheat, buckwheat, and corn. There were orchards bending beneath the weight of the fruit. There were barns filled with hay, yards filled with poultry, and fences enclosing every kind of well-fed creature a hungry schoolmaster could hope to encounter. Ichabod saw plump pigs resting in their playpens and immediately imagined them roasted with crisp skin and apples beside them. He noticed pigeons circling the barn roof and pictured them tucked beneath golden pastry. A flock of geese moved across the yard, unaware that Ichabod had already considered several agreeable ways in which they might be prepared for dinner. Even the ducks upon the pond seemed to him less like ordinary farm animals and more like promises of future happiness. It must be admitted that Ichabod possessed a remarkable imagination. It was capable of turning a tree stump into a ghost after sunset. It was equally capable of turning an entire farm into a banquet before supper. And as he wandered the property, every new sight added warmth to his admiration for Katrina. He imagined the orchard in autumn, the pantry shelves lined with preserves, the smokehouse heavy with winter provisions. He pictured himself seated at the Van Tassel table, no longer as a visiting schoolmaster, but as a permanent and respected member of the household. From there, his thoughts traveled quickly. Ichabod had never been one to confine a pleasant dream once it had begun. He imagined marrying Katrina, He imagined inheriting the farm. He imagined selling it. With the money, they might travel west, where the land was cheap and opportunity waited for men of enterprise. Katrina would sit beside him in a fine wagon, surrounded by household goods and children, while Ichabod guided them towards some broad new future of his own design. The fact that no courtship had yet begun did not greatly interfere with this vision. In Ichabod's mind, the distance between admiration and marriage was easily crossed. All that remained was to win her. This, he believed, would require delicacy. Katrina was surrounded by admirers, and she seemed to enjoy keeping each of them hopeful, without allowing one of them to feel entirely secure. A kind word might be followed by a teasing glance. A warm welcome might be given one evening, and a cooler one the next. Whether she behaved this way from innocence, amusement, or careful strategy, no one could say. Ichabod preferred to think she was waiting for a man of unusual intelligence, a man of culture, a man who could sing, and on those grounds he felt his chances were excellent. Yet even Ichabod could not fail to notice that another young man had already placed himself prominently in Katrina's path. He was everything Ichabod was not. Broad where Ichabod was narrow, bold where Ichabod was cautious, and at ease in every room, on every horse, and in every contest that required strength, confidence, or noise. His name was Abraham Van Brunt, though throughout Sleepy Hollow everyone called him Brom Bones. Brom Bones was the sort of young man who seemed to take up more room than was strictly necessary. He was broad-shouldered, powerful, and full of the easy confidence that comes to someone who has spent his life being admired for nearly everything he does. He rode better than any man in the neighborhood. He fought well. He laughed loudly. And wherever there was a race, a wrestling match, a winter gathering, or some piece of mischief likely to be remembered for years afterward, Brom usually was at the center of it. His real name was Abraham Van Brunt, though few people used it. To the young men of Sleepy Hollow, he was Brom Bones, the leader of every bold adventure and the final authority on matters involving horses, strength, and practical jokes. He wasn't cruel by nature, but he did enjoy a good laugh, particularly when someone else had provided it. Brom had gathered around himself a small company of companions who admired him greatly and followed his lead with very little hesitation. Together, they roamed the countryside on horseback, appearing in taverns, farm gatherings, and neighborhood celebrations with the suddenness of a summer storm. They were noisy. They were cheerful, and sensible people generally prefer not to leave anything fragile within their reach. Now, Brom's horse was nearly as famous as he was. Daredevil was strong, spirited creature who seemed to share his master's dislike of moving slowly. Horse and rider understood one another perfectly. Brom could guide him through rough ground, leap fences, or race along the road with a freedom that made onlookers step aside and stare. It was said that Brom could ride anything that possessed 4 legs, and some believed he might have managed equally well with fewer. Among the young women of the valley, his reputation was complicated. They found him troublesome, they found him amusing, and they found it difficult not to notice when he entered a room. And Brom knew this. Like Katrina, he had never suffered from uncertainty concerning his own appeal. For some time, he had paid particular attention to the Van Tassel farm. He appeared often at the house, sometimes with a reason, and sometimes without one. Perhaps he had come to speak with Baltus about the horse. Perhaps he had happened to be passing nearby. Perhaps the road had carried him several miles out of his way through no fault of his own. Whatever excuse brought him there, he generally found time to speak with Katrina, and Katrina generally found the time to listen. The sight of Daredevil tied near Van Tesselgate was enough to discourage many of her quiet admirers. A young man might approach the farm full of confidence, notice Brom's horse outside, and suddenly remember some urgent matter awaiting him at home. Ichabod Crane was not so easily discouraged. This was partly because he believed intelligence must eventually triumph over muscle. It was also because he had already pictured himself in possession of the farm. A man does not surrender barns, orchards, and an excellent smokehouse merely because another suitor has broad shoulders. Still, Ichabod understood that Brom presented a serious obstacle. Brom, for his part, soon became aware of the schoolmaster's intention. At first, he appeared to have found them amusing. Ichabod hardly resembled a dangerous rival. He arrived at the Van Tassel home with books beneath his arm, compliments carefully prepared, and the solemn confidence of a man who believed good singing could accomplish almost anything. And Brom watched him with growing interest. He may have even laughed, but Katrina continued to receive the schoolmaster kindly. That changed matters. Brom had always preferred open contest. If another man claimed to be stronger, Brom could wrestle him. If someone boasted of his horse, Brom could challenge him to a race. Problems of that sort were simple. Ichabod presented no such opportunity. The schoolmaster did not wrestle. He owned no horse worth racing, and he possessed enough caution to avoid any quarrel that might end with him being carried home. Brom could hardly challenge him to a singing lesson, so he turned to the one form of competition in which he had no equal: mischief. Small disturbances began to trouble Ichabod's peaceful life. One morning, the schoolhouse chimney was found stopped so completely that smoke filled the room, and lessons had to be abandoned until the cause could be discovered. On another occasion, the benches and desks had somehow changed places during the night, leaving the schoolroom in such confusion that Ichabod briefly wondered whether witches had taken an interest in education. He strongly suspected human hands. More specifically, he suspected Brom's. Yet suspicion was not proof, and Brom possessed the innocent expression of a man greatly surprised that anyone would connect him with such things. The schoolhouse door was sometimes found tied shut. Odd sounds were heard outside after dark. And once, several of the older boys arrived at lessons already struggling not to laugh, though none of them could explain why. Ichabod met these trials with as much dignity as he could manage. He corrected his pupils, he repaired the damage, and he refused to be driven away. The resistance only encouraged Brom. It has been said that he once trained a dog to howl whenever Ichabod began to sing. Whether this required any training at all was a point Brom's friends wisely chose not to discuss. The animal appeared outside during a music lesson and raised its voice at the sound of Ichabod's. Ichabod sang louder. The dog answered. The young women lowered their faces to hide their amusement. Brom, somewhere nearby, was said to have nearly fallen from a fence. Yet Ichabod continued. He was not without pride, and with each new humiliation strengthened his determination to win Katrina. If Brom intended to frighten him away, he would discover that a schoolmaster could be remarkably stubborn when romance and property were involved. Katrina's behavior did little to settle the matter. She smiled upon Brom when he arrived in his bold, careless fashion. Then she listened attentively while Ichabod discussed music, literature, and some piece of information he believed especially impressive. If Brom made her laugh, she laughed. If Ichabod offered a graceful compliment, she accepted it. Neither man could be certain where he stood. It is possible Katrina had not decided. it is equally possible she enjoyed watching them wonder. Whatever the truth, the rivalry deepened. Brom became much more watchful, and Ichabod became much more determined. And throughout Sleepy Hollow, neighbors began to take a quiet interest in the question. Would Katrina choose the broad and fearless horseman? Or would she favor the thin, ambitious schoolmaster who had already imagined an entire future at her father's table? For a time, no answer came. But then, one autumn afternoon, a visitor arrived at the schoolhouse, carrying an invitation from the Van Tassel farm. And now, the little schoolhouse stands quiet beneath the trees. The last autumn light fades from the fields. Across Sleepy Hollow, lamps glow warmly in the farmhouse windows, while the old roads settle beneath the gathering dusk. Tonight, we have met Ichabod Crane, the curious schoolmaster with long limbs, his lively imagination, his considerable appetite, and his hopeful plans for a future at the Van Tassel farm. We've watched him wander beneath shadowed trees, listen eagerly to stories told beside the fire, and dream of Katrina, her father's prosperous fields, and all the happiness he believes may one day be his. But Ichabod is not the only man with hopes of winning Katrina's heart. Brom Bones has entered the story. Bold, confident, and not all inclined to step aside. For now, the question remains unanswered. But somewhere in the hollow, an invitation has been delivered from the Van Tassel farm. And soon, Ichabod's pleasant dreams will carry him toward an autumn evening filled with music, laughter, and perhaps a little more mystery than he expects. Until then, close your eyes, let the day drift quietly away, and imagine the soft rustle of leaves along a lonely country lane. Sleep now. You are safe. You are loved. You have been listening to Nicki Woo Cozy Stories, created by Nicole T. Woodard. May your dreams be gentle and your sleep be deep.